Hey there guys, hi there, it's Gary here for GenVFX. Welcome to another tutorial. Today we're talking about planks, and I don't mean exercises. Let's not go there. No, what we're talking about really is how to take a piece of wood and turn it procedurally into planks. Again, not a real piece of wood, an actual texture of a piece of wood, but we need to make it do some funky things in the first place. We need it to be tileable, just to make it look a little bit cleaner. And that's why you might notice that the screen you're looking at right now is not in fact Blender. No, this is in fact Krita. Now, if you didn't know, Krita is an open source art package, which kind of is a little bit like Photoshop, and it's a little bit like Painter. It's got some really nice tools in there, and I personally absolutely love it. It's just recently some stuff gone into Photoshop, which I'm going to show you here, which has been in Krita for ages. And let me reiterate, this is free software, very much like Blender. So what we're going to do is going to open up an image, and I needed a wood texture, and of course I wanted to be sure that it was open source, or at least freely available, because that's the best way to do things. And that's why I use a website called Unsplash. If I just get rid of all these little bits and bobs we can hear at the top. There we go. So basically what we've found here is, thank you, Pandav Tank, available for hire apparently. This is a piece of wood that we can see here. I'm going to download this. I'm going to download the original size. Thank you very much. Say thanks to Pandav Tank on social, or copy the text below to attribute. Well, you're on social right now, Pandav Tank, and thank you very much for your wonderful, wonderful texture. I'm going to stick it, by the way. If we go into our working drive, GenVFX, Blender, textures, I'm going to make a folder here, and I'm going to call it planks wood. Okay, and we'll drop it in there, the Pandav Tank one. I'm going to leave it with its actual name in there. But yeah, this is great as well. Unsplash. So I'm just going to close this window down. And Unsplash, if you haven't seen it before, is called Photos for Everyone. Oh my lord, if you want to find anything, I recommend going here. As I say, it is totally free. Everything you use, you just attribute to people. And sometimes you do have to, and sometimes you don't have to. But just genuinely, I mean, there's some beautiful, beautiful artwork here on this website. Definitely recommend Unsplash. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to minimize that, and I'm going to open, and here it is, Pandav Tank. So I'm going to open this up. Now at the minute, this image size is, let's have a look here, let's get an image new size, resize it. We can see its width is 324 and its height is 5760. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make its new size 5760 by 5760, but let's cancel that image, and we'll go resize canvas and change that to pixels so we can see what the pixels are. There we go, px, and we'll make the width the same as the height, so 5760, go OK, and there you go, and it's made it. There you go. So that's now the right size, as it were, for this. Obviously this is not a tileable texture, but that's what I want to fix. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to take this tool here. I'm just going to move it across to here, put it about there, and press OK. And then let's pick the other one, and let's move that across to here and press OK. So now I've got two layers, and do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to merge them down. I don't mind that there's a very visible seam, because I'm going to get rid of that. So I'm going to go select both those layers, Control E, just as you would do in Photoshop, and they're merged. I'm going to call that wood. In fact, let's call it woody. And I am just going to leave that as it is. And then I'm very quickly, let's go save as, and we'll call this one, we'll call this wood tile underscore Pandav, because we might as well put his name in there as well. And that's going to be okay. Lovely. And now we're going to do this wonderful thing called wraparound. Now you might notice that this is something you have seen recently in what we call Photoshop, but this has been in Krita for ages. By the way, if you want to rotate in Krita, if you go to the number pad, you can rotate to the left with 6, so to the right with 6, to the left with 4, and press 5, and you're straight back in. and then just plus and minus on the keyboard. You can zoom in and out with those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the brushes, and it's just the sort of thing that I would literally do, the thing that I would do in Photoshop. So let me just, oh dear, giving away all my trade secrets. So let's go this, and this is a cloned brush. Let's click on the brush, and you'll notice that they're very small. And that's because they're not, they're actually really large, but our picture is really big. And I press Control. I'm going to pick here, and I'm going to drop there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just start, do the same again, just do a bit of control pick, and just start dropping this in and around all over the place, just to get rid of those nasty joins. And of course, because we are in wraparound mode, you can pull it from anywhere, and it's just going to just do that lovely clean, get rid of those linesy kind of thing. Let's pull something a bit lighter. Now let's pull it from there and drop it over here, and just, there we go. I don't like that knot being there. Let's get rid of that knot. Get rid of that knot. Let's put a little bit of lighter in there, a little bit of lighter in here, just to break it up a little bit, and try and make it look like it's not so wrapping around quite as much as it does. Now I want to be careful not to lose both of those knots. So let's just do that, and if we just go back here to view and turn off wraparound, and now you can see there we are. We have essentially something which does, of course, wrap around, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's not too bad. And you can say, right, well, let's just maybe clean this up a tad, maybe add a bit more darker areas into there, just a little bit. Let's remove those cuts in the wood there. I don't mind them over there, but I just want to get rid of those ones just there. There we go. Yeah, right, okay. So now I've got this woody texture, and I'm going to save that as well. Save that. It's pretty big, that image. So what I'm going to very quickly do is I'm going to do an image. I'm going to scale it to a new size. We've already got the width and height in there, so I'm going to make that I'm going to make that 2048. Okay, and go OK. And then that does the calculation. So that's actually 2048. Let's just zoom in, and you can see there's still loads of information in there. There we go. 100%. There it is. You see, you can see there's loads of info. And I'm going to file, and I'm going to save this as, and this is also going to be as a JPEG, but I can change it to whatever I like there. There's loads of options. I'll get a PNG, but I'm going to call that wood tile Pandav _2048. So just to differentiate, and let's do that. Okay. So we're going to save that. And that, my friends, is Krita. You can save things as a .kra file, which is the Krita equivalent of a Photoshop file. But also, you can also save out as a Photoshop file. I definitely recommend it. If you haven't used it, get a copy, have a muck around. Most of the shortcuts are exactly the same as Photoshop. Some of them aren't, and you will just have great fun using it. Also, the perspective tools and some of the tools that you can use are bonkersly good. In fact, I'll come and talk about those another time. But I did say I was going to talk about more things than just Blender. But saying that, we're now back. So here we are in Blender, and what we have here, as you may see, is well, it's kind of like a default scene, but there's something missing. Yes, that's right. And you also might notice I've changed the theme. I thought I'd try something a little bit brighter. So let me get back here, and I'm going to add in here a grid, just because grids look, I like them. They're fancier to look at. So let's go into edit mode. And I'm going to do scale 6. So we have essentially big square. And let's go straight into the shading mode. Okay, so let's go back to our object. We'll go to shading mode. If we look at that, we've got our standard environment. And I'm going to stick on this a new principal shader, because of course that's what it just does. So you can see all those lovely colors. Sorry about the headaches. And I am going to bring in our image texture. Now I can actually go into the folder if I go here, whoops, and let's go up, and I go textures, I'll put it where you can see it, there you go, sorry, textures, and planks wood, and we want our wood panda tile and drop. Now that's a really good way of not faffing around. It brings it straight in, and I've got node wrangler on, so I'm going to press Control T, and I have my mapping coordinates. Now those are quite important. I'm going to need those. So So what we're going to do is drop the color into base color. And now you can see there is our texture. And of course, if we get really close, you can see it is actually quite a good texture. Now, that doesn't look anything like planks, does it? Nope, it does not. But I know something that does look like planks, and that is the brick texture. So let's go into textures and add the brick texture. So if I was to drop this into, well, let's just do it this way. Let's do Control Shift Dump. There you go. I always get that wrong. Okay, right. So if we look here, what we have is our brick texture, and you'll notice our colors go from white to grey, and our mortar is black. Now, what I'm going to be doing is using the luminance of this to displace our wood texture. So first of all, I want this to look more like it's wooden flooring. Now, the best thing to do with that is to think, well, the general scale is one thing. Our mortar size is this. So if I mess with our general scale, it's like everything goes. Mortar size is essentially the size of the teeny tiny line that runs between each of these blocks. So if I set that under something like 0.02, no, 0.01, 0.005. There you go, that's even thinner. Still not thin enough, but it's a good start. Now, what we have here at the top is we have frequency, which you might notice is about how often you get the offset. So the offset is the first thing. So an offset of 0 means it doesn't offset at all. Offset of 0.5 means it offsets exactly halfway. If we increase the frequency, you can see it happens every third, every fourth, every fifth. So you can see what's happening. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're being moved, and then the sixth one is not, and then it's 1, 2, 4, 5, and so on. So that's how the frequency works. So that's really useful for like controlled tiling. Say if you wanted to have something like on a surface, like a tiled floor, and you could have coloured strips which go on these, and then colour strips which go on like a different colour strip going on these, which you could basically separate off with a colour ramp. And that would allow you to get something that looks like a really nice floor. But that's not what we want, obviously. We want that to be every other. And I'm going to take the color to, and I'm going to move that further down so there's a bit more differentiation. And then the mortar I'm going to leave black. And I'm going to show you now the row width. Now, if I scale this up to about, let's keep it a tiny bit higher. There you go. That is 2.8, which is good for our floor object that we've got here. It is a floor object, this plane. And the scale, of course, you can scale that up and down, but we now have essentially what would be a nice, this could be a nice panel plank length, as if you're buying them from a pack. I mean, we can let's make it a little bit longer. Let's make it 3. And then the row height, it just dictates how many of those there are. Whoa! But let's put that back to where it was. There we go. And I'm going to leave the bias as it is. Bias is good as just normal 0. Now I'm going to go back here to my procedural shader, and I'm going to just go bump on that to put that back in there so we can see the wood again. And here we are. I'm very quickly going to add the offset of this brick texture into here. Now what this is going to do is it's going to basically fracture where our texture placement is. So if I just move this in the X, you can see that moves that in the X. If I do that nice and slowly. If I move it in the Y, it moves it in the Y. Now it doesn't move in the Z, of course, because it's a 2D map. It's not procedural. It just moves in U and V, which here are X and Y. So let's move over here, and we're going to add vector maths. Here we are. Okay. And I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put this into here, and this, and put this into here. Now that, at the moment, doesn't change a thing, okay, until I add it there. So what it does is it moves all of this by a value in the X and Y, like that. Additionally to the movements I've done there. I'll just put those back to 0 when those are at 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this position of this actually out of here, because even though we'll do it that way, I think there's a better way. I'll show you. We'll just shift this out of here. I'm going to move this. I'm going to put this into location. There you go. So we've got the normal texture UV coordinates for our floor, and we also have them going here into the location. Now everything here is set to 0, because I'm going to use this basically as a multiplier of the brick values. So let's go to this. Let's change that to multiply. And I am going to take the factor out of this, which basically is a black-white value, and drop that into there. And you'll see nothing has happened. Still nothing's happened because our values here are still 0. But it's taking the black-white value out of the brick texture. And as I move this, watch what happens. Now, that is moving, if you'll notice, the X and the Y. But that's not making much of a difference, because it really should not be the factor. Essentially for this, that's causing those little lines to appear, which is in fact texture offsetting, is coming from what would be considered the alpha. Now the alpha in this might as well be color 1 and color 2 as white and black as 0. It's just assuming that if it's not black, it's therefore white. So what I'm going to do is take the color out, drop that into there, and take that out of there. And now, when I move the X, look at that, you can see it moving. So when it's at 0, it's nothing, and then move it along, and now you can see it's doing it a beautiful job of it. Unfortunately, we have a slight problem in that our wood moving it in the wrong direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to texture from point, and I'm going to rotate that in the Z. Oh, look at that. That is actually really quite pretty. Change that in the Z to 90. And now, there you go. If I move this, you can see that's moving those along. So they look like grained pieces of plank. So there's definitely a planking kind of look to that. And the problem there we have is that you can't really see where the tongue and groove is, because the value in between them is very, very high. It's still essentially the same height as everything else. Now, if this was like a slightly older floor, it would have maybe darker patches in there. So let's do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that same brick texture to darken this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add into here. Should we use the ambient? No, let's use a mix RGB. I'm going to drop that mix RGB into there. So that's now giving us, essentially, it's giving us the color that's going in plus a white. So if I make this and bring this down, this color white, okay, that kind of makes it just a dark tone, very dark tone. So I'm now going to take this factor, I'm going to drop this into that factor. Okay, so there you can see now. Now the wood is as we wanted it, but because, as you saw before, the factor gives a value that's roughly between 0 and 1, so anything over 0 is 1 straight out of the brick texture. That now means that we get that groove down there, because we've made that so that it's just black. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to lift it so it's not quite so black. But what I'd actually like it to be is not black at all, or a grey, because I mean basically I could make that any colour. I mean look, I can make it bright red. Oh, that's not bright red, but I can make it that colour, which is pretty, but it's not right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of putting in that colour, I'm going to add a colour HSV, hue and saturation. Here, I'm going to set the colour of that into the colour in, and the colour out into colour 2. And I'm now going to do this, I'm going to bring down the value a little bit. And I'm going to increase the saturation a little bit. Let's make the value 0.1. There you go. So it is. So what we've got, actually, no, not 0.24. There we go. So that's actually a slightly darker version of our wood. And it's also taken some texture coordinate changes as well. So that gives us a bit more of that in there. But that's still, you know, those floorboards, they may not actually all be that colour. I would imagine that, you know, I mean, if you're buying tongue and groove from B&Q, Home Depot, other places are available, you would probably find that the wood would be a slightly different shade. So let's do that. And again, you see, we're still back to using this brick texture, albeit all the way over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to take this brick texture, and this time I want the color values again. So if I just add in here the color, I'm going to put a hue saturation, and I'm going to put it here. So I should be able to drop that in there. There we go. And I'm just going to bring this all the way over here. I'll put it back in a bit. I'm going to bring this all the way over here. And I'm going to take the color of this and stick that into the factor. Now, what's happened is that I've done no changes at all in the hue saturation. But what I have done is all this lovely greys that are in here, they're actually now in here. But they've not done, nothing's happening to them. Let's go back to the principal shader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very gently with a finger on shift just pull the hue a little bit. I'm not sure which way yet. Yeah, I'll go that way. I don't know whether you can see that, but it's made some of them just look a little bit greener. And I'm going to take the saturation and I'm going to bring it down a little bit, so not quite so green. And the value I'm also going to pull down as well. And there, if I put it all the way down, you can see there's a lot of difference going on. Just bring it up a little bit so it's closer to 0.5. There we go. So if I was to press M, and you can see it's muted that with the hue and saturation edit. Without the hue and saturation edit, you can see it's basically bypassing it. It's just muting it. That's why it shows you that it's going from there straight out. So there you go. That's pretty nice. Now that's all well and good, but now I would like to do a little bit of bumpage. So what I'm going to do is, let's just move this all the way back over here and make this a little bit tidier. Not easy when you're using things for all sorts of the same stuff. Well, that's a good start. So what we do is we want the same stuff that's coming out of here, this actual information that's coming out in the color map, which, if you remember, is this, like that, and you can see where it's messing it around and pulling it about. We want that to go into the bump. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a converter, a color ramp. I'm going to put this color into here, and essentially what that does is it creates us a grey map, and that uses the color, which is good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a color, a mix RGB. Stick that there. There you go. And again, that's given us a white. And then I'm going to make that dark. And now I need the factor. I need to come from the factor of that. So remember, I wanted values between 0 and 1, so I'll drop that into there. And there you go. So that gives us a grey version of our color map. And then this gives us just the black mortar that comes actually from our other map. And of course, we want that going into the bump. So let's just reconnect the principal shader, bring this over here. And we're going to go add, I'm going to go bump here, color into the height, and then the normal into the normal. And you can see that's gone absolutely horrendously horrible, which is fine because the strength is far too big. Set the strength to 0.1, and now we've got something which is a little bit nicer, a little bit nicer. Now the whole of that floor looks a little bit dark until we put it actually in a proper lit environment, which is what we should be doing. We have a plank shader using one piece of wood and a couple of alterations with a brick shader, which is cool. Now, of course, if I'm going to actually do something which I should have done earlier on, which is I'm going to take this, I'm going to press Ctrl T to put on the texture mapping stuff in there. Don't need it really, but I'm doing it because on principle I should do. That's all fine if you've got a room that's that big. Say you've got a room that's bigger, or at least more to the point, say those planks look too big in the room. If you go here and you can just increase the width of those and scale these bigger so there's more of them, and you can see everything just runs really smoothly. If of course you're not happy with the texturing amount of your wood, all you do is go back here and in your scale you can adjust that accordingly as well. So there you go, you've got lots of lovely planks of wood in a room. And if we just render that, let's have a little look what it looks like. Well, thank you, Eevee. But I don't want to use Eevee. I'm going to use cycles. I'll leave it with cycles to do it because Eevee's great. Cycles is slower but better. But for something like this, for a piece of like a wooden floor, cycles, when you're using cycles for like architectural stuff, Archvis, it does have a little better finish. So that's why I'm just rendering this in cycles, and you can actually see there is a distinct improvement. But there you see, you've got a wooden floor out of one single texture, and that's great because you can set it as a shader out on its own. You can pack it into the scene as well if you'd like to, so it means that the texture will be packed in, so it'll be independent of, you won't try and look for it, it'll just actually be built into the architecture of Blender. It kind of like saves the code inside for the image inside of the software, which is really quite clever. Shading mode, and you can see that I've got Eevee on. I'm going to press 0 so we get this camera view. I'm going to press N. I'm going to pick the view, click camera to view, so I'm going to manipulate it around a bit. And I'm going to leave that just there. But what I'm going to do is, because obviously if you are doing this sort of architectural stuff, you want something that looks nice in terms of lighting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw, just very quickly, add a cube. Oh, that looks pretty. Oh, it looks so pretty. And I am going to take edit mode. I'm going to take that face. And I am going to, ooh, I don't want to do it that way. Just press T. I'm going to take that face. I'm going to push that into there. Let's take this one. I'm going to push this one up. And this one along here. Let's move around here. Push this one along here. And for the sake of argument, let's just say I'm making a wall, which is a bit rubbish. Let's just get that last one there. No, that one there. Yep. And let's lift this up. Not so it's above the floor, because walls don't really do that. That would be ridiculous. Let's bring that down. And I'm very quickly going to go into modeling. And we'll turn on. We'll turn on this view because it's a little bit quicker. And I'm going to just very quickly, if I can, just bring this down here. I'm going to take, and I'm going to do a little bit of a, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to add some more vertices just here. Let's do it this way, because I want to kind of add a little bit more detail possibly than I should be. I'm going to just pull out each of these. Let's just extrude all of those. And then I'm going to push this one in a little bit. There we go. And let's take this edge. In fact, let's take this polygon first. Move that back a little bit as well. I'm going to take this edge. I'm going to move that in a little bit like that. In fact, let's take that face and bring that face out again. There we go. Just a little. There we go. Okay, so I'm kind of just giving it a very rough edge to the bottom of the wall. And I'm just going to very quickly Shift D. And I'm going to rotate that around Z by 90 degrees. I'm not. I'm going to rotate that around Z by 180 degrees. So it's now in the right place. I'm going to push this over to here. So we've got two walls and they're intersecting. And I am going to add Suzanne, because I've never added Suzanne into one of these, and quite frankly, she deserves a little bit of, let's give her a little bit of love. She's great. So she's a freestanding piece of artwork in the middle of the room. Let's just give her a bit of rotation so she's over this way. That sounds good. Let's go back to the render view, and you can see there she is. Now the reason for that at the moment is because there is a light in this room. I am going to get rid of this light. I'm just going to delete it. And I'm going to go to our world colors, and I'm going to move these a little bit further down. Make them a teeny tiny bit blue, because it's always going to be night time, so with a little bit of blue, because you might as well. And come back out into this mode, and I'm going to add an IES light. Now IES lights, they are the most realistic light you can create, because they actually act like proper bulbs. They have the correct luminance, they have the correct values, And so in terms of Archvis, they are imperative that you use them, actually. Oh, and also they only work in cycles. Another reason for using cycles. Let's pop into cycles. Let's go to shading. And let's move this. This is our actual render view, so let's move that around to about here. And now I'm going to add into this scene, I'm going to add a light, and it's going to be a point light. Now this is quite important because IES lights only work with point lights. Don't rotate it, don't muck around with it too much. Just get it roughly where you want it. And I want to put ours over here and push it a little bit closer to the wall so we get the proper lighting. Now at the moment this is our light, but it's basically, it's just working like a regular light. That's it. It's just doing what regular lights do. And that should be like about 60 watts. But there you go. That sound like, you know, yeah, whatever. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to click on Use Nodes. And basically what that does is it changes it from a standard light into essentially an emission light. So the light output and the emission is there. So I can increase the strength here. Set that to 1. If I set the power of that down to 10 and then set that to 6, essentially we get the same as a 60-watt light bulb. It's all common sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to this a texture. I'm going to add an IES texture. Now an IES texture essentially is the information in mathematical form of how a light actually works. So leave that there and leave that there, put it into strength. And it goes bonkers, of course, because it's got no information going into it. But I'm going to go into external, and I'm going to click on the folder where I have my stuff. And we're going to go into GenVFX, and we're going to go into Blender. I'm going to Assets and IES in there. I have got a bigger 775 lum bulb with a 10-watt output. Now, when I downloaded that, and by the way, I downloaded that from, where did I download that from? From the ieslibrary.com. Again, free, fantastic. If you want to, give the guy some dosh. But here, there's all the mathematical equations in text form for all of these lamps. So you could say, right, I want a Bega lamp 3428 lum 42-watt bulb. So these are all proper. They are proper, and there are thousands of them. So you click on more down the bottom there, and more of these things just keep appearing. See, that's quite a bright one. So I'm going to click on the Bega that I picked and go accept. And now you'll see it's in there, but nothing's happened because I haven't collected the factor. Let's just stick it on the strength, and boom. That point light actually now is acting correctly. So if I push that closer to the wall, you can see it has that correct sort of drop off there and drop off there. And then here there's a gap in there, which is exactly the sort of thing that I wanted. So if I want to, I can move this towards Suzanne and move her up a bit. And Suzanne is now being lit beautifully. You can see there's a warmer light here on the edge, and then it diminishes a little bit there, and then brighter at the end. So now we have this really nice light. And if I take that point light and I go Shift D, in here, Shift D, that other light also has exactly the same info on it, which is really good. So I can essentially have another one of those lights just over here, acting exactly correctly as it should. And it's just a really lovely way of getting just bob on accurate lighting in your scene. Obviously Suzanne there looks a little bit pale. And we have got some nice flooring there, let's be honest. I wonder if we can get it to reflect in her. I'm going to be really quick. I can't help myself. Let's just give her a procedural shader. Shiny monkey. And I like her nice and sharp. So let's have a quick render of that, and let's see how that looks. So here we go. So yeah, you can actually do some really beautiful stuff relatively quickly for very little effort. So really nice bit of floor, some proper Archvis lighting, and a big shiny red monkey. It's what every person wants. Right, listen, I'm done. I'm done for the day. So I'm going to stop there. But I hope this has been some use to you. Please subscribe. I should mention it at the beginning, thinking about it, but I always forget. Just send me an idea or a little comment or even just a thank you very much, that'd be great. In fact, a few people have, and I found it really, really nice. I do appreciate all your comments. They are really nice to get, and genuinely, I honestly appreciate them. If you didn't know, I also do a podcast with a friend of mine called John, called The Grafters Podcast. It's on Spotify. It's The Grafters, spelt GRAPHTERS podcast. And we also have a website called thegrafterspodcast.com. Listen, take care, guys. Speak to you soon. And, I'll stop twittering on again. I do that, don't I? Yeah, I do that a bit, don't I? Okay, take care, guys. Bye.